Well, we all know the Oregon session just ended, and it's been ranked anywhere from a C to an F, depending on who you talk to. I haven't seen anything above a C. And delighted to have in the studio with us today Scott Jorgensen. He's reported on local and state government from various Oregon publications. He's also the Deputy Communications Director for the Oregon House Republicans Office. Lives in Wilsonville, but visiting. And he's written a book called Transition. So, Scott, nice to have you. How you doing, my friend?
Good. I've rested and relaxed, and increasingly so as the 2013 session gets further in the rear view.
So, how would you rank it? C, D, D, F?
C minus.
C minus.
Yeah. It could have been worse. I mean, we held the line on tax increases despite the constant calls for that all session.
Right.
Between $200 and $300 million. We kept pushing for further PERS reform, but that was off the table. And
the fact that you got to go back into a special session to deal with PERS reform would tell me, and get a look at it from the other side, they had control of the House, the Senate, and the governorship, and they couldn't get their main topic out and settled. I mean, it's got to be a failure.
Well, and the bill that they did pass was nothing but lip service towards actual PERS reform, because during the negotiations, they deliberately limited the discussions to inactive PERS recipients, as in people who have already retired who are no longer paying union dues.
Well, there you go.
So they threw those guys right under the bus, even though a lot of them had been paying union dues for decades.
Well, anyway, you're taking in oxygen now, and life's wonderful.
Absolutely. Getting to spend some time on the rivers around here and be with family.
Tell us about your book and what made you write this.
Well, I ended up with a lot of downtime, as it were, but it starts around my 30th birthday, which was in May 2010. And at the time, one of my friends, Wally Hicks, was running for state representative from Grants Pass, and another friend, Simon Hare, was running for Josephine County Commissioner. And it was a good time. You know, I was in the press. I was doing a radio show in Grants Pass. But we went out to celebrate my birthday because it was on a Saturday. And as we're doing that, I look around and I realized that, wow, each and every one of my friends here is unemployed. And it wasn't that my friends were losers. A lot of them had gone to college. They always had good work ethics, enjoyed working. They just didn't have much in the way of opportunity. Foreclosure notices were keeping the newspaper running at that point. My own mom lost her home to foreclosure in Grants Pass right around then. But at that point, I had yet to directly feel the effects of the Great Recession. The newspaper changed owners a few months later, and I found myself in the same situation. We ended up in the Portland area and settled on Vancouver, and that's where we were on election night in 2010. Wow. And that was a good night because Simon was elected commissioner. He took out a sitting incumbent. Wally was elected with nearly 80% of the vote. I also found out that night that I was about to be represented in the United States Congress by somebody just barely older than me. Jamie Herrera Butler was the only Republican to pick up a seat on the whole West Coast that year. And shortly thereafter, a 26-year-old by the name of Brandon Vick became chairman of the Clark County, Washington Republican Party. So I started to see this going on all around me and thought, hey, this is pretty neat. You know, people my age and younger are deciding to run for office, and they're winning. And so that became the crux of the book. Wow.
And you're calling it Transition.
Yes.
Now, are you seeing a movement within the conservative ranks, Republican Party and others? And you're right. I'm seeing young conservatives come in, but the way they're approaching politics is different than I would call the establishment, the Republican establishment, and it seems to be working. I mean, 2010 was their turnover in Congress as a result of that.
Yeah, and what I found increasingly was that it wasn't part of any orchestrated movement. It was just people individually here and there doing it. And you know, as the book goes along, everywhere I went, I just kept meeting more and more young people that were running for office. And in 2012, it was the same as 2010 in that each and every one of them won. And everywhere I've lived in the last 7 years, there are now young people representing at the city level, the county level, the state level, and the federal level. And it's no accident and it's no coincidence, and I think you're going to start seeing more of it. And it's a peaceful transition of power between generations that's going on.
Well, and I'm glad to see it because all research shows that the millennials, which would be kind of, you're at the top end of the millennials, but that bracket seems to be very conservative, very traditional, family traditions. You save money. I mean, you do all the things that the silencer generation did to build the country. So it's kind of like it's coming back.
Well, and that's one of the themes of this book, too, because to me, the Great Generation was forged by the adversity of the Great Depression and they basically made the world safe for democracy by fighting World War II and winning it.
Right.
And I think my generation will have similar opportunities with the adversity that we've faced, because in the same way that the great generation, and unfortunately they're leaving us, you know, after making such great contributions. They were shaped by Pearl Harbor. I think my generation will be shaped by September 11th.
Right.
You know, some parallels there.
Right.
They were shaped by the Great Depression. We'll be shaped by the Great Recession.
Yeah.
And I think there's some opportunity that's going to come out of it. And then instead of sitting around complaining about things, that people my age and younger say, well, let's take part in the process. And I got to see that play out in this last legislative session, because Wally was there, and my state representative John Davis from Wilsonville, who's 30 years old, you know, just turned 30. So I was getting to see them in caucus meetings, having their voices heard and being taken very seriously by people many years older than them.
What do you think's happening to the Republican Party? I mean, it seems to be in transition. You've probably heard all the complaints, like I have, as a former chairman of the party statewide for 4 years. I ran into the establishment big time, and I realized, whoa, wait a minute, there's another force out here. We backed up and came back into the state and accomplished things another way. What do you think's happening?
Well, I think there's some internal strife, but there always is. But I think what tends to unify you is watching the other guys be in power and doing a bad job. And I think that's exactly what's happening right now. And there shouldn't be a purity test for being a Republican, because a lot of the people my age and younger are conservative for different reasons, and a lot of people are, but especially in this state, you have 30 years worth of inertia going on, and a culture that exists within these state agencies because of that inertia. And I think that's the only way anything's really going to change, is if you have people with a new perspective in there. So I think the Republican Party would be wise to embrace these young people and to bring them into the fold and let them be part of the process, because, you know, based on what I've seen so far and what I've documented in here, it's working. It's
working. Well, and you guys get it. I mean, which is so interesting to me, because I think the future is in very good hands. You know, are you going to run for public office?
Maybe at some point. At this point, my role with the House Republican office is to just get other people elected. And I think once I've done that for a while, and plus, you know, I'm just raising my family, and that's been difficult these last few years given the economic circumstances. But you know, I'm getting settled over there in Clackamas County and having a good time. And if I keep an eye on my county commissioners and decide that I think I can do better at some point, I'll happily throw my hat in the ring there.
Where can people get a copy of your book?
It's available on Amazon.com.
All right.
I'll also be doing some appearances here and there.
Okay. It's called Transition, and by Scott Jorgensen. Check it out. Do you think there is a move back to conservatism in the state of Oregon? I mean, it's been a long time since we've had the governorship. It's been a long time since we've had a U.S. senator, but it appears maybe the atmosphere is right.
Well, I think all of human history goes that way. It's action, reaction, and I think once the pendulum goes too far one way, and if you look at it right now, most of the major state agencies that are in charge of the issues that are most important to Oregonians are in shambles. We paid Rudy Crew $300,000 to go find another job somewhere else. The press is having a field day with that, because the more they look, they say, wow, he violated state travel policy. He was gone a third of the days he was supposedly working here. The Department of Corrections is in shambles. The Employment Department is in shambles. And these agencies are all being run by somebody who has a decade's worth of experience running them. So he can't say that it's because he doesn't know what he's doing or is learning on the job.
Yeah, but unless you get control of the House and the Senate and the governorship, or at least one of those three, they continue with their nonsense.
Well, I plan to work tirelessly to help flip some of these House seats to get us a majority, and I think nothing's more motivated than being there in a legislative session and being in the minority, because it's a very frustrating process. And if jobs and the economy are priorities for the average Oregonian, that certainly was not reflected in the daily agendas of the legislative session.
Were you in the session before last? Not this last one, the one that it was 50-50 in the House? And
no, but I keep hearing from everybody that it went a whole lot smoother.
Yeah.
And I think some of the education reforms that were implemented during that session were starting to be rolled back this time around, which is disingenuous. And that's kind of the point I wanted to go to, because when they were forced to work together, they got along. But it appears that when the liberals have the power, they just roll over and do things. And yet the Republicans have always had a tendency to extend an olive branch. It just seems to be so contentious at times, you just kind of go, whoa. Well, when we are in the majority, we will treat them with much more kindness than we were treated this last session.
Yeah, and that's one thing I keep hearing a lot, is that the treatment, and there was really no real reason for PERS not to get taken care of, other than nonsense.
Well, because actual reform would have involved making the Democrats' biggest political donors slightly uncomfortable.
Well, there you go. So, what do you think the future is for young Republicans?
I think we're going to continue to see them running for office and winning, and part of my hope is that having this book come out might help us in the candidate recruitment process. And one of the things I talk about towards the end is that there's a lot of future leaders in their communities right now who don't even know that they're future leaders, but they're leaning that way and they just need a push. They just need to hear the call. And I'm hoping that on some level this can help make that call and inspire them when they see that other people have been doing it and been successful.
Yeah. And I commend you on that, because I really want to see more young people get involved in the process, because what's going to turn things around is your generation and others to just get in the process, get in there, go for it, and get elected early. Go for it. You know, make it happen.
Well, yeah, and if you look at some of the long-term issues facing this problem, especially at the federal level, a lot of it has to do with fixing the retirement age. And the fact of the matter is that people my age probably won't be able to retire until we're 80, but we're also going to live a whole lot longer, so it'll balance out. But I think a guy who is right now on the verge of retirement is less likely to make those kinds of systematic changes that need to happen in order for the system to survive.
Well, Scott, thanks for your service, and thanks for your willingness to do this and be involved. You're a delight and an inspiration, and I hope that people get a copy of your book. It's called Transition by W. Scott Jorgensen. Take a look at it. There's a picture on the screen, and take a look at it at Amazon and read it and share it with others. Thanks for coming in. Best to you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson.
Okay, we'll be right back.